Welcome back. Too bad. Welcome back now to the 98 podcast. This will be our second one for the year, and we're lucky enough to have Bella Holland on with us. How are you, Bella?
Yeah, we're very well, guys. Thanks for having me.
Also got Chris Feather as well.
Hey guys.
And be prepared, he's ready to speak this time. It's going to be good. Co-host, yeah. So, Bella, for those guys and girls out there that don't know who you are, can you give us a rundown of maybe go backwards?
Backwards?
It's up to you. You can go forwards if you want.
Okay, well, basically, I'm an ex-professional tennis player, so I started out sort of travelling from the age of 13. So that was my first trip away. It was Morocco in the under-14s Australian Cup team.
Morocco was the first one.
Yeah. And then sort of after I won a couple nationals, I went down to AIS for a couple years. So I was based in Canberra for about four years, and then Melbourne for a couple years. So I've sort of had an interesting journey the last 10 years, and now I've been up in Sydney working in the sporting industry.
What do you do now for work? Like, how does because you went and spoke down at the tennis, the Australian Open, yeah?
Yeah. So the Tennis Australia has just launched a new initiative called Beyond the Tour, and it's helping elite athletes transition into an everyday world, really, and it's not easy. So I went down and had a bit of a chat to a group of ex-athletes and ex-pros, which was really interesting. And now I'm working in Sydney in commercial and sponsorship at SEL.
Okay. Did you find it hard yourself, like leaving pro sport and then moving into the, I'm going to say normal life because... but going into a 9 to 5 type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I tried about 6 different career paths before I settled on one, and I think it probably took about a 3-year transition, and it's not only transitioning, but it's trying to find that purpose again and trying to find your passion. And I think when you commit yourself to training 6-8 hours a day and traveling 36 weeks a year, it's hard to sort of replicate that feeling. So it does take a while.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? How long did it take you to transition from rugby back to...
I was fairly lucky because I kind of finished playing fully professional 1 year, and then I went and played with Jules Rinaldi in France for 6 months.
Which is not really professional, is it? No.
Well, there were 2 professional players on the team, me and Jules,
yeah.
And the other 15 were sort of working on the jobs. We picked them up.
Yeah.
After work for training and stuff like that. So, but it gave me a lot of time to kind of sort of decide what I wanted to do and where I was going to go and all that kind of thing. So I came here straight from France. I think if I hadn't have had that 6 months, I would have ended up sort of going and signing for another club maybe, and less money and going down the, trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. But yeah, so it was a good opportunity for me because I sort of moved here and I'm lucky enough to get into the gym.
Bella, when did you start playing tennis?
I probably picked up my first racket about 8 years old, and that's actually quite late for some people. And then I think I started to take it seriously about 15 when I won the 16s nationals.
Did you play any sport beforehand?
I did swimming, touch, ballet, tennis, and then it actually came to a point where I had to choose between swimming and tennis because it was taking up. I'd do swimming in the morning and tennis at night. So I'm actually quite happy I stuck out with tennis.
Yeah. And then, so you went pro at what, 15, 16?
I won a challenger event when I was 16 years old. So that's probably when you consider turning pro and you're accepting prize money.
Yeah.
And then I played Australian Open as well that year. So that was an interesting learning process for a 16-year-old.
Now, for those that don't know tennis too well, I read that most of your time was spent on clay and grass. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I prefer a sort of in terms of surfaces, the Australian hard courts. Yeah. So what obviously Australian Open's played on, and then a quick high bouncing clay court to sort of French Open sort of surfaces.
And skill based, I've played tennis twice. I'll
have to take you out for a hit.
I've never returned to serve. But it's the skill, and how did you find out you were good at it? You've got definite hand-eye coordination. You could read players. Did you naturally just pick up on certain cues and things that made you better than everyone else?
Yeah, well, I think there's so many components to tennis. It's your fitness, your physicality, technique, mental strength. I was always so competitive from a young age, so I think that sort of shined through on the tennis court.
Yeah.
And then I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed competing. I really enjoyed traveling. So I just sort of went with it, and then I had a great couple of years with it, and it gave me a lot of life lessons that I'm very fortunate to have.
Yeah. Can you remember, is there a couple of points that you remember the most? Something?
There was, I think, obviously playing at Margaret Court, Australian Open. That was pretty special, and as a home crowd. And then we won the Junior Fed Cup in Italy, and I think that was the first time in about 30 years or something that the Australian boys and girls both won the Fed Cup at the same time. So that was a pretty special moment. And I think there's just been so many moments over the last 10 years, but I think they're probably, when you're wearing the green and gold, that's probably one of the most special.
Yeah. And transition-wise, now we fast forward and you're speaking to athletes about that transition back into normal life. Is that a big problem that a lot of athletes face?
Yeah,
transition?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's a huge problem, and I think one of the things that came up in Melbourne was you've got to start putting in the foundations earlier than you think. Sort of, if you look ahead, if it's 3-4 years, 2-3 years before you think you can retire, start putting in those building blocks. And if it's, doing some work experience here, if it's doing a course over there, because I think if you can do that, it does make the transition a bit easier. And that's what a lot of the ex-players, they said, if you can put in that the building blocks earlier, it really will help.
Yeah. So I guess you and I spoke last year, and I think what we were talking about your time in hospital and your rehab and stuff. Probably one of the most interesting conversations we've ever had. So I mean, I'll let you explain it. Don't shorten the details. I'm sure it's boring for you, but it's again, I read a little bit more today and yesterday about it, and we were just talking about it before. So you contracted meningococcal?
Yeah. So I'll give you a bit of background to the story. So it was May 29th, so 2.5 years ago. Basically, I was doing kangaroo point stairs, and I usually try and do about a set of 10 or 15, and then halfway through I started to feel a bit uneasy. So I went home, and then I was like, Mum, not feeling so great. Fast forward the next day, I'm in ICU. My lungs are filling up with fluid, and they've put me on a BiPAP, which is to compress all the fluid. And I had contracted meningococcal septicemia in strand W, and at that case it was the rarest strand they've ever seen in Australia.
Yeah.
And I was just at the end of that age bracket to get it. So after that, I flatlined, and they induced me into coma for 12 days. And after 12, they didn't think I'd make it at all, and then there was discussion of amputation as well of the legs or arms. And so this is my family, and all my friends that are dealing with this at the time. But the doctor, the head of ICU, initially said to my family, say your prayers. This is not looking good. Fast forward 12 days, they bring me out of coma. All limbs attached. The only thing I lost is my spleen, so I ruptured my spleen through the whole process. But basically, they thought I'd be in hospital for a minimum of 6 months. I got out after 6 weeks. So
I read that, and you started walking.
Yeah. And so I basically lost 10 kilos of muscles, and it's 10 kilos of muscle in that time. I had to learn how to walk again. It started off with sort of 20 minutes a day for the first week, then built it up.
It's a hurricane.
So just sort of built it up, and then one of the reasons I said I got through it as well as I did is because I had my health and my fitness. I had tennis to thank for how well I pull through. He said he's never seen anyone so persistent and stubborn before. So I guess that's my competitiveness coming through.
I was quite interested when we spoke about going into it. You remember falling into a coma. You said your dad was there, and I don't know what that feels like. I had trouble falling asleep. But what was that like for you?
I actually remember everything.
So,
I remember just before they induced me. I remember the period I was in coma. I was actually on an island with all my family in Vanuatu.
This is what, I mean, I was talking to Chris about it after we spoke last year. And so the coma for you was real time. So you remember you were in a coma, and you can remember you, like, consciously or subconsciously, consciously, your brain took you to Vanuatu.
Yes,
which is really nice.
Yeah, which is it.
But that blows me away. So your brain just took you to have you been at Vanuatu before?
Yeah, I actually have for my dad's 60th the year 2 years ago. So I don't know if there was a subconscious.
Yeah.
But it was.
What was it like then in the coma? So you were just.
It was bizarre because people that had passed away previously were present as well in Vanuatu. So it's almost like it was.
Yeah.
Almost like a crossing, half and half. So
it
was pretty surreal, and to remember it all and.
And it was real, so you were there the entire time?
Yeah, the entire time.
And this is like especially interesting because, Chris, you went into a coma as well.
Yeah.
After you had your tumour cut out?
No, not quite as serious as Bella, but yeah,
if you look at the coma time, yes, she wins.
Yeah. No,
what's your
just
rate?
Just being competitive.
Yeah.
I've only like 24 hours, so not too bad at all. But yeah, I had an elbow to the neck, and they said it split my carotid artery. So,
when it happened, did you pass out? Or
I was actually playing. I was playing footy at the time, so we had went in to make a tackle. Someone elbowed me in the neck. I felt like I'd been knocked out, but I wasn't knocked out. But I don't know if you've ever been, like concussed, but you still sort of kind of with it. So I sort of stayed. I played on the field for a bit longer until I were like behind everything. When I watched the video back, I was like behind. It looked like I was 5 seconds behind everyone else. So when the line would go forward, I'd be. And they took me off thinking I was tired, like I was gassed and unfit. They took me off. It was really weird, and it's kind of. It was just like being concussed in the change rooms at half time. Everything else. I went back on in the second half. And then came off at the end, and I just didn't. I wasn't with it at all. I was sort of like shaking. The sort of because the camera's in the change rooms, and you watch it after. And I'm in the background, kind of like shaking. People asking me if I'm all right. And at the time, the club doctor, was like, "Oh, you'll be fine. Go on, kind of get some rest." Blah blah. And luckily, a guy, James Evans, who I played footy with, I was living. With him at the time. I were in between moving houses, so me and him were both living at my mum and dad's.
Nice.
So he's like, "Leave your car, I'm going to drive home, this is weird." And as as we were driving home, I was in the car, and I was just like, "Oh shit, I'm like my fingers are going numb," and then my whole body went numb, and like the side of my face started to droop, and I couldn't breathe. And I had to sort of pull over the side of the road and get an ambulance, and they'd said that I had like a small stroke and then got to the hospital and the same again, but it was like I was sort of fighting everyone off at the time, and I was fairly heavy and quite big at the time, and so my dad were there, and so it kind of then that's when they induced me into a coma because it were a bit like didn't know what was going on. I kept having these TIAs, like a transient attack.
Yeah.
And they couldn't figure out what it was, and they were like, "We need to." So I think it was a bit like a sedation thing as well.
I've seen them do it with gorillas at the zoo as well.
Yeah.
But you went to a coma, and where did it take you? Like, where were you while you were in a coma?
Do you remember?
I don't really remember it too much. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
there's things I remember and things I don't, and sometimes I'll look at stuff and think, "Oh shit," and sometimes I still don't remember now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of strange, but it were just a weird sort of time.
Yeah.
For me,
conscious, not conscious type of thing.
Just kind of in and out. You felt like when I came around, I knew exactly where I was.
Yeah.
I knew, you know, where I was. I knew the hospital I was in, where I was facing out of everything else. And then he'd sort of say, I'd speak to my dad, and he's like, you know, you threw this person over, and you did this, and I was pinning you down around your neck, and this and that and the other. And you're like, what? Like, I couldn't.
Yeah.
I knew exactly where I was, but I couldn't remember how I'd got there. And
Yeah.
they didn't actually know what it was, so they put me in a coma. Then I woke up, came around. They said I had epilepsy, so they gave me a load of epilepsy medication and sent me back home, and was like, all right, you can't drive again. You know, think about changing your career. This and this, go home. So I went home, waited 3 or 4 days, but then I had another attack, like another TIA.
Yeah.
So again, by this stage, because I'd had one before, I knew what it was. I was like, I was at home, living with my mum and dad. I was like, Mum, my hand's going numb. This is weird. Like, she got me straight in the car. By the time I got to the hospital, I passed out again.
Did they put you in a coma again?
No, they didn't.
No.
I sort of got there. They sort of. Once I'd had the attack, I was, you know, like, you start to regain feeling and all this kind of stuff, and it was all right again. Again, they didn't know exactly what it was. They took me. I had another scan, and everything else, and they couldn't figure out what it was. Sent me away again. I went to see a specialist, and they did the MRI again, but they scanned on a different plane.
Yeah.
So apparently they normally scan up to down.
Yeah.
They scanned across, and they could see this small slit in my carotid artery in my neck, which kept clotting, which is why I kept having the sort of small strokes. And it will literally, like, go home, throw the the epilepsy medicine away, and take these aspirin for 4 weeks, and you'll be fine. And then, like, 8 weeks later, I played for it again.
Yeah.
So really weird, short, but
yeah. And that's so for you, Bella. You were asleep, but you were like days passed in that 10 days in Vanuatu. You just sitting on the beach, normal conversation. I mean, this is quite interesting because I think in terms of consciousness, it's like like the brain is that strong. So it just took you to a comfy place, and then all those subconscious thoughts and everything.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think when I woke up, I still thought I was in Vanuatu, which was bizarre. And then it took me maybe 4 days to sort of understand what had happened, where I am. I actually just went on a first date with a guy, and then I woke up to all his messages, and I sent him a message being like, oh, sorry, I've been MIA the last 2 weeks, I've had a lot going on. And in the meantime, he'd been up to the ICU 3 times and sort of understood that I was quite ill. So I thought that was funny. So I thought that was quite funny. But yeah, it took me a while to register, and I still couldn't walk for another sort of 2 weeks. And the first time I got up to walk, I collapsed. So it's scary how quickly your body can lose it.
Yeah.
I think I lost 10 kilos of muscle. So in 12 days.
You can imagine what type of stress your body would have been under. I mean, for them to think about like amputation and things like that, and then you were walking how long after?
Probably at 4 weeks. 4 weeks. And it's just, it's so bizarre how your body can be so familiar with something, and then
what were you thinking, or what picked you up and drove you? I mean, there obviously wasn't too much of a like negative thoughts, or you weren't worried about like what you couldn't do. I mean, what's your thought process when something like that happens?
I actually had a lot of conversations with the doctor who looked after me, the head of ICU, and he said to me, Bella, you're 24 at the time. It's like, you've had a life lesson learned so young, and like, you can be angry, why did it happen to you? Or you can be like, look, I've come out this the best I possibly can, and get perspective. It's just like, why be bitter and angry? Like, there's so many people who've had what I've had and have not come out the other end as well. And I think that's what you've got to do. You can't look at the negative. You just got to be like, look, I have this second outlook now. Yeah. Use it to the best of my ability. And that's when I it wasn't until after I got ill, that sort of helped me transition from tennis to, my next career path, my new chapter. So you can't be bitter. And there was your health is so important. And Yeah.
I suppose a lot of people, like, you hear that all the time, but you know, the health is the most important thing, and all this kind of, people can get really dragged down with like day to day, just, oh, you know, I missed this, or I got this bill, or I was fined, or blah blah. But do you find yourself, and we talk about it in a training sense, where it's like, you know, we do make sure we do. We were talking to Tom and George about it the other day, where they do army camps, and they were saying we do these army camps, we run 20Ks with the log on our back. When you're on the field, you're on the field and you think, look, we got through that army camp. This is nowhere near as hard. You know, obviously it was a couple of years ago now. Do you find yourself drawing back on it? Do you ever, like, you know, get to the end of the week and be like, you know what?
I'm not
it's been a shit week.
No, 100%. I always look back if it's a bad day, if it's work, or if there's something, like, it can never be as bad. It can never be as bad. You have your health, you've got your loved ones, and it can never be as bad. And I think I'm quite a happy person, and sometimes it's like, why is it happy? And it can be a lot worse, trust me, and it can change in a flick of a switch. So I think I always draw to that every day.
It's a fairly big lesson for a 24-year-old to have to learn. I mean, what was the rehab process like? I mean, from waking up to walking after 6 to 7 weeks, and then back training to where you are now, and then like you train like. If I hadn't have met you or known your story, I wouldn't have known for a second that never happened.
Yeah. Well, but obviously I started off walking, sort of half an hour a day, built it up. And then maybe after 2 months, I wanted to build up the foundation again, so glutes, core, just make sure all of the fundamentals were correct. And because in Canberra, we do sort of 4 or 5 hours on court, and if it's an hour of weights training, or if it's prehab. So I just wanted to make sure that the same foundation I was playing tennis was getting put back into me now. So I started off with a lot of Pilates, sort of light intensity, walking, and then actually it wasn't until I came to 98 is when I really started, so that's been a year and a half now, when I really started to build it up, and probably midway last year is when I sort of reached probably the same peak I was at before. So yeah, it was, and I've always sort of, I wanted to push myself to be better and do more, but my parents and the doctors are like, no, half an hour a day, no more. And so I think it's important to get back to your physical strength.
So you started training with SEL and Marty and Chris.
Yeah.
Did you ever know that any of this had happened?
I did. I didn't know to the extent I did, because Marty had told me. You know, like before, when, like, I've trained guys from SEL since we opened the gym, actually. Marty, Chris will be the longest standing. I don't want to call him a client because he's a good friend now, so, you know, like, he talked about it. He'd sent me, you know, he'd said, we've got this new girl coming on, because he knew the things I'd said about that, obviously the things that happened to me, and he like, and when I saw it, but like you said, I would have never have, you'd never pick it, you know, like, you never would have picked all the things that you've been through such a short time ago as well. It's not like we're talking 10 years ago, you know, it's like a couple of years, you would never. You'd never pick it, but now you can see the ex-professional sports person.
Yes, you can.
You know what I mean? You can see it. You can pick it a mile off. In everyone that's been in, you know, you look at like the people like Dan Kowalski and people like that. You like these guys.
Well, I didn't know anything about it. I had a client from Fortis. He had what's his name? Does a lot of yoga. He used to play tennis as well. God, I don't know. I'm calling him Brian. That's not his name. But he said, "Oh, you know, it's Bella. This is what happened to Bella." I was like, "Really?" And this is why you're thrashing away on a salt bike. You know, one like Tuesday or Wednesday.
Is that Paddy?
Yes.
Yeah. We got that.
Yeah. Very close to Brian. But yeah, and then he told me your backstory, and I couldn't believe it. And there's obviously like do you think your mindset and your grit and your determination, when was that developed? Was that developed? It was obviously developed prior to like the virus, but how did you build it from such a young age? Do you think it was always there, or were your parents involved in it, or?
I think it was always there, but when you're on the road from such a young age and you're travelling up to 36 weeks a year, I think you also develop it. You're playing 36 tournaments a year, and that grit, that determination, that competitive is there.
You see it and learn it off others, or did you just
the Russians give you a run for their money. So yeah.
I'm on the side too. And like mentor wise, did you? I mean, I know when I was going through like my military career, the best advice I ever got was like find someone that you think you want to be like and model their behaviours, model their career, and just chase what they've been doing. It was same sort of thing for you in terms of behaviours and work ethic, or do you just like again to develop it yourself?
Well, I think generally the Australians, the people I surrounded myself with on tennis court, they had a very good work ethic. And sort of we had mentors growing up like Sam Stosur, Alicia Molik, and Pat Rafter and Leighton Hewitt. So, and I think if you all look at them, they're determined athletes and they've got good morals. So, yeah, I would say, and also my family, my parents are always such a strong support system, and they were always, they put my sort of well-being first.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of something I've, I guess over the years.
Yeah. And like, how did your mum and dad take all this? I mean, that would have been quite a, like, when you were sick and everything, you would have like two very strong parents.
Yeah, I think for them to see what I was going through firsthand. My mum couldn't come to hospital because she was just beside herself, but I think for them to witness what happened and for me to come out the other end, to extent they're extremely proud. And just perspective again, like, nothing can be as bad as watching a loved one be as ill as that.
Yeah. And so fast forward now, what's your like day to day? What's your weekly? What's your training schedule like?
Ideally, I would like to train between 5 and 6 times a week. Well, growing up, we did so much fitness testing. We did the beep test, we did the 505, there was the VO2 max. So for such a long period of my life, there was so much physical testing. So now it's quite nice to sort of pick and choose what I like and to sort of maintain it.
Yeah.
But ideally, sort of 3 cardios and 2 weights. If I'm sticking to that at the moment, I'm not too sure. But after Christmas, I'll get back into it.
After Christmas, that's what I keep hearing that one word.
February.
It's coming to March soon, yeah. And do you still play?
Not as much as I'd like to. I want to get back into it and sort of play some pennant and things like that, but it's just so tough because I have such a high expectation. And if I don't deliver it to expectation...
We'll have a go.
Yeah.
We'll play doubles.
We'll do.
Yeah.
So I think I need to ease back into it, and it's something I invested so much of my life in, so I definitely need to continue it.
Yeah.
But it's just, I moved cities, it's just trying to get it all organised.
And what brought you to Sydney from Brisbane?
Well, ultimately I wanted to get into the sports industry.
Yeah. And
I think in terms of Brisbane, there was not a lot of opportunity, so it was either between Sydney or Melbourne. And I spent a lot of time in Melbourne as an athlete, so I thought Sydney would be a challenge. And I ended up getting an internship with SL, which is a great company. And sort of over the last year, I've learnt an incredible amount. And it's interesting to be at the other spectrum of the sport.
Yeah.
What goes into an event, what goes into the commercial aspect, the sponsorship. Whereas as an athlete, you rock up to the tournament and you play. So in that way, I think I took it for granted a bit as to how much went into a tournament. So I'm really enjoying the process, and I think next year will be great. Yeah.
Do you like when you said you had like Rafter and a few of those guys as mentors? What were they teaching you? Like what did you take away?
I think hard work. Like all of those players, they just hard work. They will not leave the tennis court until they feel 100%. They look after their bodies. I think nowadays injury prevention is the biggest thing. If it's rugby, if it's tennis, golf, I think with the travel schedules and the courts and the amount of time they're on court, it's just injury prevention is crucial.
Yeah.
So they would be so diligent with their warm-ups, their cool-downs, and just make sure preparation. Preparation is key.
And I mean, in terms of women's sport as well, I mean, tennis has got to be one of those the highest grossing ones that people watch. Was it? Did you notice that growing up, or did you feel any pressure? Was any type of like pressure around you as a woman to perform or anything like that? Was it you didn't see any of that?
Yeah, no. When it's I think your home Grand Slam or you're playing tournaments in your home country, I think there's always if it's not from someone else, you put pressure on yourself to perform.
Yeah.
And I think I'm also such a perfectionist, and I'd want to play the best, and I'd want to be the best. But it's just also we'd have a certain criteria we need to reach in order to get a scholarship from AIS or Tennis Australia. So I think at the end of the day, you put more pressure on yourself than anyone will put on you.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like the fear of failure sort of mindset.
Do you have a match you can remember, like your hardest opponent?
I think I don't know my hardest opponent, but my hardest match and something that I will always remember is I played my first televised match at Sydney International, and I lost 6-love to Jelena Dokic, and I came off that court, and it's like the biggest heartbreak to this day I've ever felt. And it's just like you're disappointed. You felt like you've let your team down, your family down, and you just carry all of that weight on your shoulders. So probably not one of my best memories, but it's probably one of the ones I remember the most.
Yeah. Did you go in there thinking that she was better than you? Did you go in there thinking like this is out of your depth, or she's definitely, a strong opponent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not. I think it was more an internal battle more than anything. And it's just, as I said, it's just like, oh, I don't want to stuff up on live TV. I don't want to do this. I don't want to let my team down. Like, do I deserve to be here? So I think, if anything, what I discovered on my time playing tennis, I think you're your own biggest opponent.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, as an elite athlete, will find that. It's sometimes everyone,
Yeah. Did you find that at all, mate? Did you? Was that difficult for you to ever overcome? I mean, you played with guys that you were just used to absolutely idolise.
Yeah. I suppose it's slightly different, as in like there's always kind of 17 of you on the field. So even if I always think an individual. I know it's like a team, but if you play an individual on the court, it's one person. It's down to you and everything. Like you could be in a team and play a not so great game and it never be noticed by the thousands of people that are watching or your mum and dad but obviously when you go and do the video, it is noticed. I think you do. I feel like you spend so much time doing it. I think it's not even just like I was thinking about what you were saying earlier about where people need, like athletes and stuff, need to start thinking about starting, a couple of years before you retire, building stuff in and all this kind of thing. I totally agree on that. I think that there needs to be time put aside for that in your week, because as an athlete, you're training 5 days a week and you're playing a day a week, but you don't just sort of walk out of the change room, shut the door and forget about it until 6 o'clock the next day. You're going and recovering, you're going and doing shopping so you can eat well, you're making sure you sleep, you're going and maybe doing some kind of promotion and stuff like that. I can see how it's very easy to not think about 3 years' time. Whereas I think, because I know we've got a guy that works for us, does like AFL player welfare, and a couple of guys in England who I know are doing the rugby football league over there, and they're kind of putting spaces in the week where it's like, you know what, this is where you need to be, and whatever it may be, you kind of you build it into your weeks. You see, it would be very easy. Or it is very easy.
I think that's also why the college system has become so big. The last the last 6-8 years. I remember initially when I was going through AAS, they sort of didn't encourage it because I think once you're going down that path, that's that. But I think over the last 6 years, there was a stat: the top 10 USA male tennis players, 8 of them went to college.
Yeah.
And then I know the last few years, and so the female, there was a girl that just made quarters of semis at the Australian Open, Danielle Collins, and she just graduated from University of Virginia. So I think that going that pathway now is quite popular because it takes that pressure off, and you come out and you have that sort of education. And there was a girl, an Australian girl, who did quite well, and she just did pre-med. So
that's quite well,
and I think also for golfers, it's becoming quite big. Tennis players, so it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's cool that it's been you know, like it's been noticed and it's been pushed as like more important. You know, it's
Yeah.
part of your career now.
Yeah.
It's like, you're on the field, you're playing, you're looking after yourself, but you're also thinking about what next.
Yeah, I think it's cool too. I mean, we did it at work, started at work a few years ago, where once you spent 2 years within the unit, they start to look at you're eligible for a master's program and a few other things, because inevitably, you know, mentally you always want to be very competitive and do the job, but physically there comes a point where, you know, things start to slow down and you might get injured, and there's nothing worse, I think, than being like pulled from something before you're ready.
Yeah.
And if you get that time to study and choose a way out, and I think that mentally is so much easier than like playing really well and having a catastrophic injury and then having to decide now you can't do this, you must do something else. And even education, I still think that's one of the greatest things we've got, because it just allows you to develop another skill set, find, you know, not necessarily your passion, because not everyone's lucky enough to do that. But you're still working in and around your passion, would you say?
Yeah. I think I always want to be in sports to an extent.
Yeah.
And that's my passion, and I think that's what's so great about SEL. I'm exposed across so many different platforms and pillars. So yeah, we'll just see what I'm good at.
Do you have another favourite teams? You watch another sport? Any at all?
Watch a bit of the tennis. I'm a fair bit of the tennis. I'm trying to think what else. Don't mind a bit of the Union, but we'll see how that goes.
Who do you support? Do you Super Rugby teams or?
Oh, I'm just talking Wallabies. NRL, Melbourne Storm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and when I was based in Melbourne, we did a lot of cross training with Melbourne Storm.
Yeah.
And they were a pretty good group of guys, so that was always good to see them out on the tennis court, their hand-eye coordination. I think all sports I'll watch and engage, and I don't follow anything religiously, but I enjoy watching it all the time now.
It was interesting talking when you talk about the mindset before and how you're your worst enemy. I was talking to Dan Kolsky about it last week and asking him when he was training and swimming during the Olympics whether or not there was much work involved in the psychology of any of that, and he just said not really. And then a lot of the time you were beaten by yourself before you got in there. And I guess swimmers would suffer the same type of thing where it's you, a lane, and there's like a definite like, yes, did you pass, or no, did you not do as well? And they've just gotten so much better with that over the years. I guess, I think back to where I was when I was 23 or 24. I mean, sporting wise, you're on a big stage, people are watching you. I mean, was there much social media around?
No, so that's fun. It's interesting now, sort of the last 3 years really, is when sort of all the Instagram and Twitter and all of that have come in. I think when I was travelling, Instagram had just started coming out. And then, so it's interesting to see how all the athletes now, they're so engaged, and all the sponsors and everything are sort of check what their following is like.
Yeah.
So I think I was lucky in a respect that I just sort of missed it, but then it has so many advantages and tools.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I get, and everything you do or don't do is now there's everyone believes their opinion is valid and that needs to be tweeted or posted or whatever. You guess you wouldn't have had any of that either. Like social media, maybe a MySpace.
I set a MySpace up
there
for a while.
Sorry,
Nah, they weren't.
I was around when I was carrying pigeons, so it was.
Yeah, no, they were not none of that kind of thing really. I think we set Instagram up when I opened my gym.
Yeah.
So, but no, I didn't really have any of that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that in itself, that type of pressure, when like these days when everyone believes that their opinion is like held accountable. Talking to Tom and George, where those guys are responsible for every win and every loss, regardless of what. And then they've also got to handle themselves appropriately as soon as they step outside the house. Everything they do. I mean, if someone followed me around with a camera when I was at that age, even now, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, you're thinking now,
Hey, this is life.
But even I know some of my friends are still playing. The criticism and negativity they get from people who are betting in their accounts, like they just get abused, and it is like with the terrible things, and there's no way they can stop it. So as I said, it's a good tool, but it has its pros and cons.
It's nuts, yeah. I mean,
something on that, and slightly off that. I was watching the other day, and if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But I watched the tennis, and I watched, a couple of people kind of smash the racket into a million pieces or walk off the court and throw the bag, and all this kind of thing. And I'm also watching at the same time, like 12-year-old ball boys watching it and girls and all the people on TV watching it and all that kind of thing. I think like when we played footy, it was, at the time it was like respect the referee. If you spoke back to the referee, that way you were gone kind of thing. Soccer always had that, where they used to blow up at the referee and everyone kind of...
It's a different sport altogether.
Yeah, but do you think that's like, is that...
It's interesting because I actually went to a friend of mine, Luke Heggie. He's a comedian, and he does this bit in his show about it's interesting with tennis bad boys, and I don't think there's any tennis bad girls, but where it's a really interesting sport where you can like afford to smash your own equipment on the and I agree. I think. Who are we talking about here? Because if he listens, I don't care. What's his name?
I forgot it.
Della?
No, I know. It was the Spanish guy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a Spanish guy.
Yeah.
I just mean like,
I agree. Yeah.
We talk about all the hard work, all the like dedication, training hours.
And you see a snapshot of you being at Derek and
you're watching. So many people or young kids are watching. And you can look at like, listen to this and think about all the hard work that needs to go into it and everything else. But I don't know. I feel like.
You think that plays a part in so I'm a massive fan of like Leighton Hewitt because of his work ethic.
Yeah.
That fist pump does it for me every single time. But he works hard. He was very, very aggressive. But I don't think there's been too much ever in the media about him. Look at Rafter. Look at most of them are okay. And then we've got McEnroe.
Yeah.
So he was that was interesting. Agassi and all those guys, and then some people are known for their massive tantrums.
Yeah.
Do you think they become that, or is it just something that,
I think all of those players, like in the heat of the moment, it's so hard to control your emotions, but they have so much respect for their opponent and they have great sportsmanship. So I think, everyone is going to have an occasional slip up, but the common denominator is they have great respect for their opponent.
Yeah.
And if they keep that, I think, if it's a 6-all in the fifth set and you miss a shot, who knows what you would do. Your emotions, the adrenaline, it's running wild. So sometimes they probably can't even control that.
Do you think they take on a persona once it's been pushed in the media on them? Like we've got a couple of Australian tennis players, male ones that, that sometimes take it too far. Whether or not it's, whether it's, I'm not sure. I find it tough to watch myself. When it becomes less about their ability and their game, and it becomes more about their tantrums. And whether or not that's media driven or whatever it is, I'm not there. But I don't. Yeah, I'm the same as what you were saying. That's tough to watch, and it takes away from the sport. But you've got this responsibility in the end, whether you like it or not, as a player.
To
act
be a role model.
Yeah.
I think also that's another thing. Social media comes in; it sort of amplifies that by 100. And they are young players under heavy scrutiny, and they are good kids, but it's just they have no idea how to sort of act in that sort of spotlight. And hopefully in time they can get educated, but we'll see.
Was that around, like, did you have like media training and things like that when you went through?
Yeah. So
I was told you not to throw your racket.
I was pretty well behaved most of the time. It's media training on and off court, and just sort of simple things as what to post and what not to post. But at the end of the day, it's common sense. Yeah. It's common sense.
Yeah, which is never that common. Yeah. Was that the same for you when you went through? Did you do media training? I know you've had some interesting events afterwards. But rugby league players tend to never be in the spotlight.
It's totally different in England.
Yeah.
Because no one gives a shit about. I played for 11 years and it was great, but you'd never see a rugby league. You're lucky to see a rugby league player on the back page.
Okay.
It was all about soccer, football, whatever you want to call it. So there were never that much, scrutiny for rugby league players at the time. It could be different now. I haven't been there for 10 years, so. But we did have media training where if you were spoken to by, but like Bill said, it's all pretty common sense.
Don't take your pants off.
Don't say, but no, I think it was helpful, definitely. Just kind of cement the way you thought about answering the questions. I think mainly with the thing, because you could get asked a question, answer it, and it could be sort of spun around as
a lot like Married at First Sight.
a bit like Married at First Sight, actually. Yeah.
You watching that at the
No,
moment?
I don't watch reality TV.
Get on it.
We could do a podcast right. I think we will.
Yeah,
That's a good sport.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, like from my point of view, I never had social media until I left the army, and our media training was quite simple. Was like, do not talk to them. If you see them, run the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And even like throughout the years, we never engaged with them because, like, from my point of view, they like at the time they're not to be trusted. And then getting social media, and then no one trolls me either. I try. But that, yeah, so I found it interesting the last few years, just negotiating that, and also understanding that not all media is bad, but it's the way you can mould it to. I mean, this is basically media, true media.
True.
Yeah. It's got to be tough for younger players.
Yeah.
Now, has that got anything to do with what you do now with your talks, like post, pre? Is this what's involved, or is this purely you finish, you help people?
Yeah, just sort of, I think there's been a few sort of incidents over the last 6 months where some athletes haven't sort of transitioned as well as they could. So I think after a certain incident, they just decided we need to do something now. I think rugby union, rugby league's doing it, and I think, to be honest, it should have been implemented a long time ago.
Yeah.
And we've got John Newcombe, Yvonne Goolagong. There's a great sort of mentor program happening, and sort of to acknowledge the players of their efforts and success over the years. And so, because I think what's happened, what the conversation I had with a lot of people is like, they'll see them playing a tournament, and then 6 months later, oh, where's such and such gone? So they can't really sort of acknowledge and sort of let them know how well they've done. And even if it wasn't they didn't achieve as much as they would have liked to, just acknowledge that they've done it. It's a great achievement.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do you find, did you ever identify yourself as a tennis player and then have to move on from identifying yourself as a player to what do you identify yourself as now? So if I asked, like Chris, who are you? We'd probably say something like you're like a business owner, or like a dad and that sort of stuff. When you were playing, you were obviously, that's what you identified yourself at.
Yeah, so every time we went back to Brisbane and catch up with everyone, they're like, so you're the tennis player. The tennis player was never Isabella or Bella, it was the tennis player. Yeah. So I think, you do get identified as being certain, and it took a while for them to realise I wasn't a tennis player anymore.
Yeah.
And, we'll see. I'll let you know what I've been doing. I'll let you know what I'm not too sure yet.
You can make it up. That's right. Yeah. It is hard when you come from something where you've spent like a big chunk of your life and then having to move on through to identify yourself as something else. I am still super proud of what I did, but it took a long time to even have the words come out of my mouth that like I did a different job. It was just because that's what you identify yourself as for so long. Yeah. And I think if that's ever taken away from you, and what's the average lifespan for a league player? 3 years, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's as much as you think. Yeah, I think it's 3 to 4 years. I read something the other day.
Yeah. And a tennis player would be roughly the same.
It's actually quite interesting.
Because they're older.
Average age of, I think Serena's 32. The average age, I think, is 28 or 9 now.
Yeah.
So I've still got time to make a comeback. To make a comeback. Perfect. And then Feds is, 36 or 7 now?
Yeah.
So it is getting a lot later,
yeah.
The average age of the top 100. But it's just, as I said, I think it's a lot to do with your body, injury prevention, and just having that consistency, longevity.
Whatever happened to Filippou? What happened to Filippou?
I think it was a shoulder injury, I'm pretty sure. He had a shoulder injury.
Fast serve.
Yeah, big serve.
And then I remember he dated Paris Hilton.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I think he's just had a second child. I read somewhere.
Not Paris.
No.
I mean, like you look at this sport, and and it's the same for me. I reckon as cricket, like everything is done not necessarily one-sided, but it's very, very one-sided on the body. Like you serve one side, you hit, you return, both sides, I guess, but you stop in the same direction. It's very stuffed, like your ankles, your knees, your hips, your back, like an absolute smashing.
Especially with the new flexi cushion courts, it's just so grippy, and the movement on your body is so harsh.
Yeah.
Especially for your knees. So I had a lot of knee issues. That was one of the reasons I eventually stopped. And your body you're playing 3-4 hour matches and you have to back that up. If you've got 6 matches in a week to win a tournament, unless you're playing a Grand Slam that's over 2 weeks and you get the day in between off. But yeah, it's just, and I think there's a big talk now with the ATP and WTA to shorten the season, because I think it's only a 4 or 5 week off season by the time they have Davis Cup, and then you start the summer circuit at the first week of January.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of time, and I think that's why Feds is very smart. He picks and chooses his tournaments. I think it's like 10 or 12 a year, and his scheduling is really crucial. And so that's another thing, you've got to find what surface works for you, what conditions work for you, and that's another aspect of it. You've got to be really smart with scheduling.
What's the prize money like?
It's doubled since I played. I know that. Yeah, it's if you're top 100 and you're getting into the Grand Slams, I think first round, is it 70 now? 70,000 if you lose first round. And when I was playing, it was...
Wow, let's go.
Yeah.
Well, let's try.
And I think when I was playing, it was about 25-30.
Yeah.
So that's just doubled. And Djokovic, he got 4.2 million for winning the Australian Open.
Wow.
4.2. And I think Federer's gross prize money has been 160 million. So
you live on.
yeah, so it's definitely getting better, but outside that sort of 200, it is quite difficult because just with the futures and the tournament structures and the tiers, it's quite hard.
Yeah, I guess it's, and then you just people struggle. Is that one of the reasons people drop out, because they struggle to move on? And struggle
They sort of like, you've got to go from 300 to 200, and then it's 200 to top 100 is a really quite a hard transition. And it's an expensive sport. Like if you're serious about it, if you're serious about it, you have a coach, and a coach's salary is anything from 100 to 200,000, and then you've got to pay for their travel expenses on top of that, not yours. So unless you have support from Tennis Australia or AIS or the French Federation or wherever you're from, it's a very expensive sport.
Yeah.
So nice. So you need to be sort of making couple 100,000 just to do it the right way.
That's interesting, yeah. Wow.
And it's not a team, it's an individual sport as well, which is quite expensive.
Well, if there's any tennis place out there, 98 Riley Street, myself and Chris will follow you around. 100 plus a year. That's not an issue. I'll wear a sweatband if I have to. That's nuts. And so like physically now, like knees, the back, the shoulders, everything's okay, or you just?
Yeah, no, I think everything's back to normal. My knees play up quite a bit. Ideally, I wanted to run a marathon and start from Meningococcal Australia to raise some awareness and money for them. So I'm just trying to pace and see how my knees go for the next sort of 3 months. But ideally, that's probably one goal I would like to achieve by this year, and 10 chin-ups. So I got my peak, my best, or my PB is 12. Yeah.
Pull-ups or kilometres?
No.
Yeah.
Kilometres.
That was a good one. That was a lagging laugh. Yeah. It's 12 kilometres is probably mine. I'm still recovering from the City to Surf 2 years ago. That'll
be something I won't be doing this year.
Or ever again.
I'm just recovering from Sunday afternoon.
Thanks, Ananas.
Yeah.
I tried to prove a point a couple of years ago that it was pointless to run. I actually said that running breeds cowardice, and that I just trained on the assault bike and deadlifts. We ran it, but it was not comfortable the next day.
No.
I felt like someone had punched me in the calf for 2 years. Yeah, that was the worst thing I've ever done. But it's funny how everyone revolves their fitness goals around running. It's nuts, isn't it? Like, I know mentally it's like hard to run a marathon. My dad decided at 40, because Mum had said to him once that he had a gut, but that's okay because he was always going to be that way. That's just what happens. And he got pissed. And then next day, and again, he wasn't that aware that, like, just because the shoe said Reebok, that they were running shoe, he actually started running in Reebok going out shoes. Yeah, and then he started saying my knees hurt a lot, but he did a half marathon to prove his fitness, and his only goal was to finish it, but he didn't stop running, he finished it. I think he pissed blood for 3 days afterwards.
Oh no.
Yeah, He's a mentalist.
That's
Yeah, but then like he's just based everything. He runs every day, cycles, paddles. It may be because they're both retired, and that's going to be tough to be around the same person for so long. But yeah, and he still refuses to this day. Like he's upwards of he's reaching the top end of 70 soon, but he thinks that strength training will make his running slow. He believes he may get too big if he goes to the gym.
No, it's an important fundamental, strength training.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I had to run like in the army. That was our thing. Like if we were doing PT, then we'd just run, and we noticed knees and hips and that sort of stuff. And but yeah, I just don't want to run ever again.
No, I'm not massively into it.
How did your body pull up after? I mean, what were the kilometres you were punching out in a game? You reckon?
I wouldn't have a clue now because we didn't have, obviously now they have GPS and all that kind of thing. I wouldn't have a clue. But it was very similar when I first started playing. It was loads of running and loads of heavy squatting and deadlifting and bench press.
Yeah.
And you were measured on like how fast you could. We did the bleep test all the time. We did max bench, max squat. That was pretty much it.
Did they have that for you, Bella? Did you have GPS when you were around? Like, did you track the game? Sort of
in training and what we would have, we would sort of track our heart rate and how many steps and sort of all that would do.
Yeah.
But I was saying there's numerous times we'd woken up at 5 a.m. to do a surprise beat test. That was just surprise beat test and skin folds. That was not fun.
Skin folds.
It was like a nightmare.
It was like that. So that was pretty funny looking back on it. But we did a lot just to sort of track our heart rate because we've got 20% seconds in between points to get it back down.
Yeah, well.
So that we sort of worked on that a bit as well. And I was just actually saying, we were talking to Marty before when I injured my knee. We did a lot of swimming. We did hypoxia efforts. So we'd sort of swim underwater 25 metres, get up and sprint back. And I don't think my lungs have ever burnt so much to improve that VO2 without putting that pressure on your body.
It's interesting too because we talk a lot about like anxiety, stress levels, heart rate variability, and then the difference between if your heart rate when you train, it slowly climbs and it increases, but then anxiety, heart rate can do just the same. So when we used to jump, we put a heart rate monitor on, and as you were jumping at the door, like your heart rate would be at like 200 plus. But it's got nothing to do with like the physical effort of the thing because you sat in the plane, and then when the doors opened, you realised that you and this little bit of silk was like going to take it to the ground.
It's making my heart rate. I was thinking about it.
But then, when you look at the difference between like stress and arousal levels and heart rate, that's quite the hypoxia stuff's great.
Yeah.
But then a lot of it's got to do with like the stress. If you're a bad swimmer, you go underwater and hold your breath, like you're stressed out. But it's very, very interesting.
I think also performance anxiety is big, really big, and that's one thing I really struggle to control. And that's probably one of the things that Match I was talking about previously. The performance anxiety was just through the roof, and I just had no idea how to control it.
Did you? And it was just.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Owen and Frank's is an All Black and his brother Ben as well. So these guys are quite aggressive and like just hell bent on performance all the time. And there was a point where one of them was like being selected for the team, so they were worried about, okay, so I better have a really good game, a really good practice, so their heart rate would spike through the roof because they were so like annoyed or focused on making sure they could have a good practice or play a good game, so that would spike on a Monday, and then they'd select the team on a Wednesday, and if they were on the bench, they'd get pissed off and spike again, so they'd have another really hard session, and by the time it came to the Saturday, it already peaked twice or three times throughout the week in terms of heart rate and stress and anxiety. And when they got 20 minutes to play, like they were so exhausted from all that spiking throughout the week that they couldn't do it. So they needed to learn how to back off and control their heart rate.
Sorry, Rob.
That's right.
You can cut it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's some of the guys forbidden.
Give it a second.
That's right.
20 past 1.
Oh,
Are you going back to? Oh, we can drop you next.
I guess we're rushing 8. Oh, sorry, just hold on. We'll have to
beat this person. Sorry. Yeah, yeah. Good. All right. Yeah, so the heart rate stuff's quite interesting, the anxiety stuff. I mean, we used to do this thing called combat breathing, where it was, we'd breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, repeat it 2 or 3 times, and then it would bring back your fine motor skills, also bring you back down to like level again where you can make a better decision on your objectivity and then return as well. That was quite interesting. Or even a word that we used to say that would bring us back to zero again. Bring us back to I've seen right now I'm doing combat breathing. But obviously we've literally seen physical cues throughout football players as well. I mean, did you have any physical cues? Did you have any physical cues when you used to play?
They're literally walking away now. So annoying. Like 2 minutes, guys. Like, give us 2 minutes.
Did you have any physical cues that you used to bring you back to zero, or were you aware of what happens when you were 10 thoughts ahead of what actually did happen?
Yeah, we would work on a lot of breathing techniques, and I think also routine, because when you're under a pressure situation, you don't stick to your routine, and then so if you're serving, it's bouncing the ball 4 times, make sure you stick to that and just sort of draw back to your breathing and draw back to that and focus on that. So I think routine was one that we'd always draw to, and breathing. So that would really sort of bring you back down.
Do you have a time when you would tell yourself, okay, I had a bad match or I had a bad practice, this is the cutoff when I stop thinking about it and move forward, or that you never consciously did that? Or
it's easier said than done.
Definitely.
Easier said than done, but I think it's after getting sick, I sort of look back onto all tournaments and all this, my playing career, and I wish I had just enjoyed it a lot more and just not taken the pressure off and, assess not more on the loss for so long and,
On behalf of the pod, I would like to apologize.
It's rustling the paper.
It more than likely won't pick it up.
Okay, sweet.
Like, literally, like it'll block. It's just annoying. Like,
Okay.
It breaks your concentration. It won't pick it up.
I actually lost it where we were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think some losses lasted longer than others, and there was just mostly the next day you'd be like, come on, just get over it, onwards and upwards, get back in the training court, do all the right things and prepare for the next tournament. Otherwise it's just a snowball effect, and if you're in Europe for 8 weeks and you're the first tournament, you can't have that mindset.
What about you, mate? Was there cues that you had all with stuff? Did you guys even run through that back then, or
no? We didn't. It's funny now.
I make it sound like it was, you played Jesus Christ or something, but
it's funny though. Coming from listening to all the stuff we do at work and now, and all of the things you read and the things you listen to and all that kind of stuff, I can look back on it now and be like, that's why, for example, playing at night. We used to play at 8 p.m. Well, we trained every morning at 9.
Yeah.
So you trained every morning at 9. So you woke up at 7. You were fired up at 7, like 7:30. You ate. You went to training. You trained. You felt really great.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden at night. Then all of a sudden on a Friday night, it's like right 8 p.m. It's dark. Run out on the field.
Yeah.
Now I know now they train like South. If they're playing at night on a Saturday night, then Thursday, Friday night they're training. And you look back at the things that people have learned, like I was saying, the breathing and even like all of the mindfulness and all that. I think looking back on it, if I'd have understood that, if I'd have even been aware of it, it would just. I used to think, shit, I'm nervous. That's good because I need to be nervous. And that's sweet, and it didn't really kind of, it affected me. It made me anxious and nervous, but I like that because that was one massive thing for me when I retired. I was just going and playing. No, I was going and play. I came here and played a few games for a club up the coast, and I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anxious. It didn't mean enough to me. And I played a game, and it was like, I've got to call it because I'm not. I'm playing against these young lads who want to kill people and make the NRL, and I'm not into it as much as I wanted to be. I just want that. So I think we didn't really have any. There wasn't really that stuff around. And looking back on it now, I wish there's a lot of things I can pick out of like my career or teams' performances and stuff like that. Where you're like, shit, that's what happened there.
Also, I think even now, speaking to some of the players, diet is so huge. And there wasn't such a big emphasis on diet and mindfulness, and now I think they're two of the biggest components now on top of all your fitness.
Yeah, it's funny. It's smart, but I guess we're learning a whole lot more now. I watched that documentary Heal the other day. I don't know if you've seen that. It's about the brain-body connection and how people they interviewed 1,500 people about with stage 4 cancer and how these people, amongst a number of different things, these 1,500 people all did these 9 things, and only two of them were physical things, and that was they had a little bit more herbs and they radically changed their diet. The rest of the things, the other 7 things they did, were all mindfulness stuff and positive focus and things like that. But the 2 big things were what you put in your body, your diet and adding in some herbs and things like that. And I've just finished that book again, Sapiens. I don't know if you've read that before. It's absolutely brilliant. But you look at how young we are in terms of our actual physical and cognitive growth, just in biology, and how advanced we are now with crap that we make up to stuff in food to make it taste better, and DNA just hasn't caught up. I've often wondered, like, what are we doing to ourselves with all this fake shit we put in our food? I mean, we all know the difference when we eat really well, sleep well, and don't have 20 beers a night. Naturally, your body just becomes normal again. But look at all the different diseases that are out there with anxiety and skin rashes, and it's all like unknown. It's quite interesting.
It's funny, after I got out of hospital, I had monthly blood tests. And my first blood test I had, and because I was penicillin resistant, so that was another thing that was going against me. But all the drugs they put in my system to fight the infection and to fight the sepsis, I just had a sort of a natural approach. A lot of my mum, she's very all for herbs and turmeric and things like that. So I just sort of put that through my body for the next month. Then I went to the doctors, and from my livers were 100%, my kidney was back to 100%, and so was my lungs, and they were all on. Yeah. It's
nuts, and this stuff it just doesn't get out enough. I don't think it makes there's too much of a juice cleanse type of diet stuff going on. Or
his celery juice is quite the trending now. May have tried it myself.
Daily Mart. It is. It's so true. Like it's a new trend going through again and again. But it's nuts. Like your mum, who I'm sure has probably never really tweeted that much or hit Instagram that often. No. And just by eating healthy. I mean, I enjoy talking to Harriet, who's our nutritionist at the gym, and it's because she knows so much, and it's just so blatant for her. Like, of course, your lifestyle is huge. She told many people that I can't do anything for you food-wise until you fix your lifestyle up. And your lifestyle includes whatever crap you put in your mouth, whatever sleep you're not having, whatever anxiety you've got at work. But it's very, very quick. Your body wants to heal itself and turn itself around. I mean, if you can do that to your liver and kidney, I mean, they must have been on some intense pressure.
Yeah,
with that virus.
They at one stage, I think they were going to take out one of the kidneys because it wasn't. They didn't think we'd recover at all because I was on dialysis. So this is a month after dialysis, and they had no explanation as to how or why the kidney recovered so quickly.
Yeah.
So I ended up using it as a case study at University of Queensland Medical School.
Just slide that one in there.
But I think also another thing they said for recovery. So to this day, I sleep anywhere between 9 to 11 hours a night.
That's the dream.
I mean, I was, so, and that's the biggest for me to recover. They said sleep.
Yeah.
And I sort of lived by that for the last 2 years.
Sorry, I've got to sleep.
See Marty.
Yeah.
I actually wake myself up snoring yesterday on the couch in the office, Well, I got got malaria in 99, 2000 from a trip overseas, and I just thought it was a common cold. And then I started having some fits and things like that, just like every now and again. I just thought I was 20 years old, I think. I thought I'd just shake it out and I should be okay. And then I woke up in an ambulance and then in hospital. And the same thing, it attacks your liver and kidneys. My spleen blew up, it was full of blood. I almost lost it, but they were able to counteract it. And I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. And the temperature that would, I'd be like a temperature of 39, 40, and then which can fry your brain, which may explain a few things now. But I got the best advice from a nurse in there. She said, you need to go away, you need to sleep a lot, and you need to eat really healthy. You need to, that's all you need to do for the next 8 weeks. And then the same thing happened. I came back, they did some blood tests, and and it helped being 20, 21 years old. But the body wants to heal itself.
Wow.
It's quite interesting. Now I pepper it with beer and wine.
Red wine.
Red. That's got antioxidants. It's a berry. Bella, thanks so much for coming on today.
No, thanks for having me. It's been very good.
From the moment we spoke last year, I don't know how many people I've told about your story, and I've always found it quite interesting. I think it blows my mind. The conscious thing, the coma thing, how strong our brain is, but also how physically and mentally strong you are to have that happen to you at such a young age, and to bounce back and to be as happy and as healthy as you are now. It's awesome. Yeah. I know Chris has enjoyed himself because he's spoken 10 times more.
Yeah. No, it's been good to have you. It's interesting to listen. It's obviously interesting to sit and listen most of the time. But it's been good. Thanks.
It's also interesting to chat with people who have gone through a similar experience and sort of listen to stories and.
It's nice to have you in the gym as well. It's good.
I'll be back tonight. I'll be back tonight.
10 plus.
Yeah, 10 plus. I wish I didn't say that, otherwise
it's all right. I'll sit on the side as you jog your marathon.
Yeah.
So we'll come up with a better one.
Yeah.
K run, that might be better. Yeah. All right, guys, thanks a lot for listening in, and thanks a lot for your help. Give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, and we'll see you again soon.